She didn't even bother lying properly. That's what hit me first, not the absence, not the text, not even the fact that she didn't remember our anniversary until it was already over. No, what cracked the floor beneath me was the sheer laziness of the lie. Don't wait up. Last-minute strategy session at the Sherwood downtown. It's critical. That was the text. 11 words. Not even a period at the end. A strategy session at 7:43 p.m. on a Friday at a hotel that offers $22 lemon drops and complimentary slippers. I was sitting at the table, steak resting under a dome of steam, asparagus I'd grilled just the way she liked, olive oil, lemon zest, black pepper, never salt before searing. Candle lit, napkins folded like I saw in that stupid YouTube video last week. The chair across from me was empty. Of course it was. The phone buzzed again, some reminder from our shared calendar. That's when I noticed it. Her own entry. Prep night with M. Sherwood, Suite 1803. She'd written that a week ago. A week. So much for last minute. And the reservation confirmation? Not even in her name. Martin Croft. Her boss. SVP of Strategy at Cowridge Solutions. Husband. Father of two. A man who wore Patagonia vests over dress shirts and liked to use words like synergy and bandwidth during casual lunches. I didn't text back. What was the point? She wasn't expecting an argument. She was hoping for silence. And that's exactly what I gave her. I reached for the laptop sitting beside my untouched plate, opened the lid, and pulled up the folder I hadn't opened in 6 years, the one titled Contingencies. She always joked that I was too organized, too cautious. You prepare for disasters that haven't even been invented yet, she once laughed. Yeah, I do. Inside the folder was a tab labeled Shareholder List. Cowridge Solutions was privately held, but not small. Mid-sized consulting, lots of government contracts, lots of tech vendor overlap. It had grown fast in the last 5 years. Rachel helped with that, or so she claimed during dinners where I pretended to listen while she name-dropped executives like they were friends and not the same people who still asked her to make a quick Starbucks run before board meetings. The chairman of the board was Karen Croft. That last name wasn't a coincidence. Martin's wife, Harvard Law, took over after her father died, controlled 37% of the company outright. No one made a move without her signature. Rumor was she'd stepped back from daily operations to focus on the foundation side of the business, but I remembered seeing her name attached to a compliance committee report last quarter. Still involved. Still active. Rachel once described her as frigid, calculated, and terrifyingly polite. Said it with a sneer, like it was a joke. I remember because I said, sounds like someone I'd enjoy working for, and Rachel didn't laugh. She just sipped her wine and looked annoyed. I opened LinkedIn. Karen Croft's profile was easy to find. She didn't post much. No inspirational quotes, no corporate buzzwords, no beach photos with hashtags about balance. Just credentials, connections, and 2 recent articles she'd reshared from sec.gov about executive ethics and board oversight. One was titled, When the Company is the Victim. That made me smile. Not a big smile. Just a small, grim twitch in the corner of my mouth. I clicked through her connections. Found her business email in the public filings. Cross-referenced it with a board directory PDF someone had uploaded to an industry forum months ago. It was still active. Then I took a screenshot of the calendar entry. Then another of the Sherwood Suite confirmation. And one more of a message Rachel had forwarded to me days ago, complaining about how much time she had to spend prepping decks for Martin's ego. I bundled them. Attached them to a blank email. Subject line, you deserve to know. I didn't write anything else. No commentary. No passive-aggressive barbs. No accusations. Just evidence. I hit send. Then I closed the laptop and looked back at the steak. Still warm. Medium rare, just the way Rachel liked it. I didn't touch it. I stood, took the plates, scraped them clean into the trash, and ran the faucet until the water steamed. The candle was still flickering when I sat back down in the dim room. The only sound the soft clicking of the ceiling fan pulling shadows across the wall. I stared at her chair for a long time. Then I blew out the candle. The strange thing is how easy it was. Like the universe had been quietly preparing me for this moment. Lining up little breadcrumbs I hadn't even noticed, nudging my mouse to the right place, making sure the paper trail was digital, precise, damning. I didn't have to guess her email. Karen Croft had given a keynote last year at some compliance conference. The slides were still floating around online, footer intact. Her contact was right there, tucked between the legal disclaimer and a quote from the federal sentencing guidelines. She didn't use an assistant's inbox. She didn't hide behind info at. No, it It was just croft@cowerjerp.com. Direct. Uncomplicated. Like everything about her, I imagined. I stared at the screen for a moment longer than necessary. Not out of doubt. Out of respect. This wasn't a message I was sending to hurt her. It was a message she had earned, even if she didn't know it yet. She was walking blind into a wall built by her own husband and my wife. I was just turning on the light. Subject, you deserve to know. I didn't write a greeting. No, hi Karen. No, I hope this finds you well. Just attachments. 3 PDFs. Each with a title so blunt they didn't need explanation. Rachel_sweet1803.pdf. Screenshot of the Sherwood booking from the shared calendar, complete with her profile photo in the top corner, smiling like a fool. Martin_confirmation.pdf. A copy of the hotel reservation itself, forwarded to our joint Gmail weeks ago by accident. The kind of mistake Rachel made when she forgot which inbox she was logged into. FW_Rachel_working late with Martin.pdf. A message thread between Rachel and me. She was venting about having to pull an all-nighter again thanks to Martin's magical thinking, and complaining that he wants everything tight and polished before he shows the deck to Karen. She even used scare quotes. No dramatic commentary. No whining. No scorched earth manifesto. Just the receipts. Literal ones. And a closing sentence. If you already knew, disregard. If not, I figured it wasn't fair for me to be the only one cleaning up someone else's mess. Click. Sent. I closed the tab, leaned back in my chair, and let the quiet stretch around me like a weighted blanket. The steak was still on the counter, still vaguely pink in the center. I chewed through it mechanically, not tasting much. Not because I was numb, because I was focused. There's a strange calm that comes when the screaming happens entirely in someone else's future. I wasn't going to raise my voice. Not now. Not when every move was finally out of my hands. That email was a match. I just tossed it onto a dry field. Let the wind do the rest. I rinsed my plate. Wiped down the counters. I wasn't expecting anything to happen right away. Women like Karen don't slam car doors and burst into rooms screaming. They sharpen the knife before they even walk into the kitchen. No, I imagined she would read the email once. Then again. Then she'd say nothing, not even to herself. She'd pick up her phone and call someone on the board. Probably late. Probably calm. Just a quiet. I need a copy of Martin's travel expenses. Pull last quarter. And Rachel? I pictured her sipping wine in some overpriced hotel robe, acting smarter than she was, misreading Martin's temporary attention as a promotion strategy. She had no idea what was already circling. I went upstairs, packed a small duffel bag, just the essentials, laptop, toothbrush, 2 shirts, the navy pullover she always hated because it made me look too much like a professor. That's the one I chose to wear. There's something freeing about realizing that you're not part of someone's story anymore. That they edited you out before the final act and thought you wouldn't notice. But I did. And I had the script. All of it. I grabbed one more thing before I left, a small wooden box from my bottom drawer. Rachel had given it to me years ago when I got promoted. She said it reminded her of how I always keep everything neat. Inside were 6 pens, all unused, and a printed card for when you sign the next big thing. I took one of the pens, just in case, locked the door behind me, drove to a hotel across town. Not the Sherwood. I picked a place with no bar, no valet, no lobby jazz music. Just a bed and walls and time. I checked in under my middle name. Rachel wouldn't notice. She'd never bothered learning it anyway. The fuse was lit. I had nothing else to do but wait. And let the other woman, the right woman, take it from here. They really thought they were untouchable. Rachel, my wife, the woman who once got anxious if I so much as raised an eyebrow when she overspent the grocery budget, was now lounging in a white Sherwood robe like she was auditioning for a reality show. Her hair still curled at the ends from her midday blowout. Her lipstick just a little too fresh to have been from dinner alone. She looked smug in the photos Martin took, her wine glass tilted just enough to catch the pendant lighting in the bar. I saw it later, of course. A dozen selfies, all saved to her cloud account, which, God bless her idiocy, was still linked to the tablet she left on our shared Amazon profile. In one photo, Martin had his arm around her shoulder, fingers dangerously close to the strap of her dress. In another, she had her bare feet propped up on the table between them, laughing at something on his phone. And in one final gem, my personal favorite, she clinked her glass against his with a caption she typed herself, "Cheers to visionaries." Visionaries. They weren't discreet. They didn't need to be, they thought. It was late, and the Sherwood's bar was mostly empty except for a few solo travelers scrolling through their phones. Martin handed his card to the waiter like a man doing the world a favor. Tipped 20% without making eye contact. Rachel used his last name at check-in earlier, probably thinking she was being clever. Maybe she believed the front desk clerk was too bored or too tired to care that the room was reserved under M. Croft, and she introduced herself as Mrs. Croft, with an awkward little pause before the name. But someone did care. 2 tables over, Karen Croft sat with a vodka soda and a laptop that hadn't left her side all evening. She wasn't wearing makeup. No jewelry. Hair pulled back. She looked like she belonged there precisely because she didn't look like she was trying to. Her daughter sat beside her, earbuds in, watching some animated film on an iPad with barely a glance toward the adults around her. The older son had just returned from checking in, used the same last name. Different card, different room, all coordinated. They hadn't come for drama. They came for proof. Karen never glanced their way, not once. She simply watched the screen in front of her. I imagine it was the hotel security feed. If you sit on enough boards, you know how to ask for that kind of thing. Or maybe she was reading emails from legal. Or pulling expense reports that showed just how many strategy sessions Martin had billed to the company card over the past 2 years. She was calm, cold, efficient. At 10:13 p.m., Rachel and Martin made their way toward the elevators. Her hand grazed his lower back as they waited. The kind of touch that makes no sound, but says everything. At 10:14, Karen's fingers moved for the first time in 10 minutes. She closed one tab, opened another, typed something into a secure server. Hit send. The lobby emptied slowly after that. A few tired guests wandered out to smoke or grab ride shares. The bar staff wiped down tables. Rachel and Martin were now 30 floors up, sealed in their suite, sipping whatever overpriced wine they'd brought in with them. Maybe they were watching TV. Maybe they were congratulating themselves for pulling it off. Maybe Martin was talking about that new international pitch, how it would catapult them if the board backed it. They didn't know the board was already watching. They didn't know the chairman had arrived 4 hours ago with a burner phone and a folder of legal documents in her handbag. They didn't know their own children were 4 floors below, sleeping in a room Karen had reserved under her maiden name, just in case. At 11:42 p.m., Karen closed her laptop. She didn't speak immediately. She took one last sip of her drink, set the glass down with a quiet clink. Then she turned to her daughter, 15, maybe 16, and said, calmly, "He'll be done lying by morning." The girl didn't ask who. She didn't have to. They all knew. Karen stood, adjusted the strap of her bag, and walked to the elevators. She didn't look up at the chandelier. She didn't glance toward the bar. She just disappeared into the elevator shaft like smoke vanishing into a vent, silent, total, and unmistakably final. Some people crash through doors. Others rewrite the locks. And that night, without raising her voice, Karen Croft made sure that when the sun rose, her husband and my wife would wake up in a room that didn't belong to either of them anymore. At 8:03 a.m., the elevator doors sighed open like they always do, quietly, predictably, without ceremony. Rachel stepped out first, still mid-laugh, her voice trailing behind her like perfume. She had her trench coat folded over one arm, coffee in the other, heels clicking confidently across the marble, as if the hotel lobby were just another runway designed to showcase her new sense of elevated self. Her hair was freshly washed, damp at the ends, and she wore that too bright lipstick she only used when she wanted to feel younger than her regrets. Martin followed. His eyes were bloodshot from too much wine and too little sleep. The man looked like a divorce lawyer's daydream. Creased shirt, loose belt, an aura of overconfidence barely hanging on. He carried nothing, not even his dignity. They were halfway to the front desk when he saw her. Karen. She was standing across the lobby, beside a marble column like a portrait come to life. Not pacing, not fuming, just standing, waiting, and flanked on either side, 2 teenagers. Their kids. The daughter clutched a paper cup and looked at the floor. The son stared directly at his father. No expression, just ice. Rachel stopped. Her smile faltered. She turned to Martin and whispered something, probably, "Is that?" But he didn't answer. Because Martin's face had gone gray. Not white, not red, gray. His mouth opened. "Karen." She raised one hand, just enough to silence him. "Keys." That's all she said. No screaming, no slapping, no teary ultimatums. Just one word, spoken with the precision of a scalpel. Martin fumbled in his pocket. The sound of his keys clinking together was the loudest thing in the lobby. Rachel took a step back, now visibly panicking. "Karen, this isn't what it looks like." Karen didn't even glance her way. Her eyes never left her husband. I wasn't talking to you. Rachel, shut up. Martin held out the keys. But Karen didn't reach for them. A man in a black suit, unassuming, but clearly security, stepped forward from the elevator bay and took them instead. Karen turned to her son. Room 1830, she said. Go pack everything. Leave nothing behind. He nodded and walked past Martin without a glance. Their daughter followed, eyes still down. Rachel looked like she'd just been shoved into traffic. Karen, please. Karen finally turned her head. Her gaze landed on Rachel like a ledger closing. You'll be contacted by HR by noon, she said flatly. I suggest you clear your schedule. Martin tried again, voice cracking. Can we at least talk? Karen tilted her head. You've been doing plenty of talking, Martin. Just not to me. He had nothing. Not a defense. Not even a pathetic excuse. Just sagging shoulders and the sudden realization that he was no longer the one holding the room key, or the title, or the benefit of the doubt. Karen looked back to Rachel. I assume you drove separately? Rachel stammered. I took a lift. Good. I wouldn't want you near my children. Rachel flushed crimson. Her mouth opened again, but Karen was already turning, walking away. Not a scene. Not a scandal. Just silence, precision, and brutal hierarchy. Behind them, the front desk clerk had frozen mid-keystroke. A bellhop stood motionless with a luggage cart, eyes wide. And Martin, poor, brilliant, short-sighted Martin, stood alone in the middle of the lobby, keys gone, job gone, and the very real sense that the world was about to get very, very small. Rachel reached for his arm. He pulled away. That was the final touch. Not a scream, not a slap, just rejection. From him. As if she were the liability now. They didn't speak. They just stood there in the echo of what used to be power. Karen didn't look back. She didn't need to. She'd already won. Quietly. Surgically. Publicly. And every single person in that lobby knew it. Martin's first clue that the world had shifted beneath him came in the form of a polite little error message. At 9:17 a.m., he stood at his kitchen counter, still wearing the shirt from the night before, trying to log into the company server. He had a media prep call scheduled with 2 junior consultants, and a calendar full of action items that required him to pretend he hadn't just committed career suicide in a downtown hotel suite. But the login page blinked twice and spat out a message he hadn't seen before. Access restricted. Invalid credentials. Contact IT. He tried again. Then on his phone. Then with his VPN. Same message. His heart didn't race. Not yet. He told himself it was a glitch, maybe a server patch. He even tried laughing as he sent a text to the IT manager. Hey, think I got locked out again. Can you check? No reply. At 9:29 a.m., he called the office. Got voicemail. At 9:34, he tried calling Karen. Straight to voicemail. At 9:41, he checked LinkedIn. Just habit, really, and saw nothing out of the ordinary, except one odd little ripple. Coleridge's official page had posted a quote from the chairman. Strong companies are built on trust. Everything else is noise. No context. No hashtags. No link. Just that. Martin stared at it for a long moment. Then his hands began to sweat. At 10:02 a.m., in a co-working space on the other side of the city, Rachel was about to step into a client call when her phone buzzed with a message from her team lead. Postpone all meetings. HR will contact you. That was it. No smiley face. No context. She stared at it, rereading it twice, 3 times, as if new words might magically appear. 10 minutes later, the Google Calendar entries began disappearing in front of her eyes. Block after block turned gray, then blank. She tried calling her manager. No answer. She opened her email. Nothing new. Then, at 11:30 a.m., the subject line appeared. Violation of ethics clause. Preliminary notice. The sender? Lisa Chung, HR director. CC'd? Her manager, Karen Croft, and the company's general counsel. Rachel didn't even open it right away. She just sat there, staring at the bold text like it might evaporate if she blinked hard enough. When she finally clicked, it was somehow worse than she imagined. No warmth. No ambiguity. We are conducting a preliminary investigation into the use of company resources for non-business activities, including but not limited to undisclosed relationships with supervisors, misuse of travel expenditures, and potential conflicts of interest. Please be advised you are not to delete, forward, or otherwise alter any digital records, messages, or documents related to this matter. You are on administrative leave effective immediately. Her hands trembled on the mouse. Across town, Martin was on his 5th attempt to reach someone, anyone, at the office when his doorbell rang. It was a courier. A sealed envelope. Inside, a formal notice from the board of directors, citing extraordinary circumstances and invoking Clause 12.4 of the leadership contract. Translation: emergency session requested. No agenda attached. Just a signature line. Karen's. He read it twice, the heat draining from his face. This wasn't damage control. This wasn't HR cleanup. This was eradication. Back at her shared workspace, Rachel had moved to the stairwell, trying to steady her breathing. She dialed Martin. Voicemail. She texted, "Have you heard from legal?" No reply. 10 minutes later, "They froze my card." "Did they do that to you?" Still nothing. Then, finally, at 11:52, she got a reply. "Don't text me." 3 words. Cold. Final. No signature. She stood there, phone pressed to her palm like it might bite her. The walls were closing in. Not metaphorically, literally. The company had frozen her access. IT had disabled her credentials. The card she used for client lunches and reimbursable expenses was declined when she tried to pre-order an Uber back home. And at that exact moment, at 12 p.m. on the dot, every member of Coleridge's board received a digital packet. Inside, screenshots, calendar entries, expense reports, room bookings, a detailed timeline of events. The subject line read, "Chairman request, emergency board review, immediate action recommended." Karen didn't send it from her usual address. It came from her compliance mailbox. No flare, no commentary, just fire. The fuse was no longer lit. It was burning, and nothing could stop it now. The memo dropped at 1:07 p.m. Not a whisper, not a hallway rumor, not some cryptic email buried in euphemisms. It was bolded, branded, and pinned to every team Slack channel and inbox across the company. Subject: Executive Leadership Review and Transition Period Announcement. The message was short. No flourishes, just bullet points. Each one a quiet detonation. Effective immediately, Chairman Karen Croft will assume interim CEO responsibilities during the transition period. A full audit of travel, expense, and personnel policies is underway. All discretionary corporate card access is temporarily suspended pending review. Managers are instructed to refrain from any commentary. Questions may be directed to legal or human resources. No names mentioned, but everyone knew. The omission was the signal, and it echoed through the building like a pulled fire alarm. In the 15th floor cafeteria, Rachel stared at her phone like it had betrayed her. Her badge no longer opened the door to the executive lounge. The team calendar no longer displayed her name for the Zurich conference. Her assistant, well, former assistant, had quietly taken down her nameplate and replaced it with a laminated placeholder. TBD. She stood there for a moment, jaw set like she might storm into someone's office and demand an explanation. But there was no office left that wanted her in it. Downstairs, Martin had just finished attempting damage control with one of their vendor liaisons. He didn't have clearance anymore, but he was still clinging to the fantasy that if he acted normal enough, long enough, the storm might pass. He tried to walk back into the building from the parking garage, swiping his badge like muscle memory. Red light. He tried again. Same result. The lobby receptionist, new girl, maybe 25, nervous as hell, stood up and said, "Mr. Croft, I think they asked you to wait downstairs today." He gave a tired smile, tried to laugh. "I've worked here for 8 years." She didn't reply. She just nodded awkwardly toward the couch near the glass wall. Then they arrived. 2 men. Not security in the mall cop sense, real corporate security. The kind that dresses like law firm interns and never raises their voice. One had an earpiece. The other held a tablet. "Mr. Croft," the taller one said, "you're scheduled for an exit debriefing. We'll escort you up to retrieve your personal items." Martin blinked. I still have calls today." The taller one didn't flinch. "The calendar's been updated." He laughed again. The sound was hollow, almost desperate. "Is this really necessary?" The shorter one finally spoke. "Sir, she outranks all of us." That landed like a slap. They rode the elevator in silence. He didn't speak. Neither did they. Floor after floor passed like pages being torn from a calendar. When they reached the executive suite, the doors opened into a hallway so quiet it may as well have been abandoned. His assistant's desk was empty. No coat, no coffee cup, just a stack of manila folders and a note. Left at 12:30. Good luck. Inside his office, the shelves were bare. Someone had already boxed his awards. Photos of his kids. The hand-signed letter from the CFO he once framed like a diploma. All of it, reduced to a banker's box labeled property of M. Croft. He stared at the desk for a long time. Then he walked over, picked up the box, and turned back to the 2 men waiting just outside the door. Can I at least say goodbye to my team? The tall one didn't blink. They've been instructed not to gather. He carried the box down the hallway past glass offices that now seemed larger, colder, and unfamiliar. Faces turned away. Some pretended to be busy. A few stared, none with pity. Just curiosity. The kind people reserve for train wrecks that don't involve blood. By the time they reached the elevator, his box was heavier than it should have been. The doors opened. He stepped in. They did not follow. Just before the doors slid shut, Martin turned back and caught sight of a final detail. Karen's new nameplate. It hadn't been there this morning. Now it was etched in brushed steel and mounted dead center outside the CEO's office. No title, just her name. As if to say, no one else is needed. The doors closed. Outside, Rachel sat in her car, gripping the wheel with white knuckles. She hadn't started the engine. Her phone sat on the passenger seat. She kept expecting it to buzz. A call from Martin. From legal. From someone. Nothing. The silence stretched long and thick. She looked down and noticed something odd. Her Cowridge corporate ID badge, clipped to her purse, like always, was missing its RFID chip. Peeled off. Deliberately. She hadn't even noticed it happen. The system had. And now, it had erased her. Rachel walked into the house like a woman expecting a fight. Shoulders tight, jaw set. Her heels clicked against the tile like punctuation marks in a speech she hadn't rehearsed. The front door swung closed behind her with a finality that made her flinch. But the silence that followed was worse. No dog barking. No ESPN hum from the living room. No faint scent of coffee lingering in the air. Just stillness. She stood in the foyer for a beat too long, letting her eyes adjust to the dim light. Outside, the sun was high and cruel. Inside, the blinds were drawn. A faint layer of dust clung to the console table near the door, the one he always wiped down without being asked. Her suitcase handle creaked as she wheeled it past the entryway, through the hallway, and toward the kitchen. She hadn't even realized she'd packed it herself at the Sherwood that morning. Half asleep, half dazed, she'd thrown things into it between Martin's panicked phone calls and her own unraveling calendar. The kitchen was clean. Not lived in clean. Prepared clean. She noticed it instantly. The counter was bare. The magnetic strip that used to hold his knives, empty. The drawer that used to stick slightly on the left, smooth now. He'd oiled it. Or maybe he'd just removed everything. And then she saw it. A printed sheet of paper, pinned under a ceramic salt shaker on the fridge. The Sherwood logo at the top. Room 1803. Date. Time. Guest name, Martin Croft. Occupant notes. Late arrival. Additional guest expected. Please prepare champagne. It was the reservation confirmation. He'd printed it. On the back, in his handwriting. So neat, so deliberate, so painfully him. A single sentence. I believed in you. She felt her knees soften. Not collapse. Just give, slightly, like the foundation of something old finally realizing it can't carry the weight. She pulled the note from under the salt shaker with shaking fingers. Held it like it might dissolve. Read it again. And again. It wasn't angry. It wasn't cruel. That's what gutted her. It was honest. Which made it permanent. She dropped her suitcase in the hallway and rushed upstairs. The bedroom door was open. Too open. Like it had been left that way on purpose. The closet was gutted. Not in a messy, dramatic way. He'd packed carefully. Hangers were spaced evenly. The row of ties he'd always kept sorted by color was gone, but the hooks remained. His cologne, the one she used to tease him for overusing, was missing from the dresser. The drawer where he kept his watch and ring, empty. Not even dust. She opened the nightstand drawer and found only one thing. A photo. It was from their 10th anniversary. They were both smiling, holding glasses of red wine. She looked younger. He looked the same. Steady. Present. She'd forgotten this photo existed. She sat on the edge of the bed and stared at it. For how long, she didn't know. Eventually, she went to the bathroom. His toothbrush, gone. Razor, gone. The mug he used to keep his contacts in, gone. Only her things remained, lined up in smug, unbothered rows. The house wasn't empty. She was. Downstairs again. She walked through every room like she was searching for something to be mad at. A scratch in the floor. A broken plate. A drawer left ajar. There was nothing. No damage. No explosion. Just absence. The keys were on the counter. Not tossed. Not hidden. Placed. Next to them, a small envelope. Her name on it. Inside, a USB drive. She plugged it into her laptop. A folder opened. For records. Dozens of PDFs, scans of statements. Calendar screenshots. Text logs. All labeled with timestamps. Everything Martin would need to protect himself in court, if it came to that. She scrolled until she reached one last file. Anniversary dinner _ prepped menu.pdf. Her breath caught. It was a 2-page document. Recipes. Notes. A shopping list. At the top, 20th, her favorite night. He'd planned it. Every detail. The seared steak. The lemon asparagus. The bottle of the Bordeaux they'd shared on their honeymoon. There was even a sticky note scanned in, labeled, "Set playlist to track 4, still yours." She closed the laptop. Now she was crying. Not loud. Not gasping. Just leaking. It wasn't the affair. It wasn't even the career implosion. It was that she had been chosen once. Quietly, deeply, without ceremony. And she threw it away for a man who texted her "you up?" like a punchline. She sat on the floor of the kitchen, legs folded awkwardly beneath her, and stared at the fridge. At that damn note. I believed in you. Not, I loved you. Not, I miss you. Believed. Past tense. Done. And now? Now, there was no one to explain herself to. Not even him. The conference room on the 22nd floor wasn't used often. Too sleek. Too clinical. No warmth. Just glass walls, matte black chairs, and a circular table that made no one feel truly at home. Which, of course, was the point. At 8:59 a.m., every board member was already seated. Water glasses untouched. Laptops open, but nothing typed. No idle chit-chat. Only one person was still missing. At 9 o'clock sharp, the doors opened. Martin entered wearing the wrong suit, an off-navy thing that used to fit when he still had a future. His tie was askew, his face mottled with a sheen of cold sweat. He gave a tight smile to no one in particular and moved to the open seat across from Karen. She didn't acknowledge him, just turned a page in her leather folio and tapped the table once with her pen. "This hearing," she began, voice steady, "is being recorded under Article 3.1 of the company's internal governance policy. Present are all voting board members. The agenda has been distributed in advance." Martin cleared his throat. "Before we start, I'd like to." Karen didn't look up. "You'll have time to speak after the facts are presented." Silence. She gestured to the general counsel, who began reading from a printed statement. "In the matter of Martin Croft, Senior Vice President of Strategy, the following infractions have been substantiated: breach of ethics clause, non-disclosure of a romantic relationship with a direct subordinate, misuse of company travel resources, and suspected falsification of expense reports pertaining to non-business-related hotel accommodations." Martin opened his mouth again. "We're consenting adults. This doesn't affect performance." Karen finally looked up. Her eyes didn't flare. They didn't soften. They ended the conversation. She reached into her folio, pulled out a thin binder, and flipped it open to a highlighted page. Lifted it slightly for the board to see. Section 14. Clause 3, she said. Undisclosed romantic relationships with subordinates are grounds for immediate termination, especially when involving the misuse of company resources. No one responded. No one needed to. The language was their own. It was his, too. He helped draft the employee manual 4 years ago. Smug about it, even. Said it would bulletproof the company against emotional landmines. Karen didn't look away. "You submitted 4 travel expenses this quarter. All 4 involved stays at the Sherwood, billed under client prep. None of those clients reported in for deliverables during those periods." Martin's voice cracked. "You're going to fire me over this? After everything I've built here?" Karen didn't flinch. "No, Martin. We're firing you over what you destroyed." She turned to the rest of the board. "All in favor of immediate dismissal, per Section 14, Clause 3? Hands went up in unison. 7. Karen didn't vote. She didn't have to. Motion carries. Effective immediately, Martin Croft's employment is terminated. His severance is forfeit due to breach of contract. Legal will issue formal documentation before end of day." Martin didn't move. Didn't speak. Just sat. Karen turned a page. "Next item," she said, without pause. Rachel Feldman. Another silence. But this one was different, thicker, uneasy. She continued, "Associate Director of Strategy. Direct subordinate to Mr. Croft. Recipient of multiple discretionary bonuses, travel accommodations, and third-party consultant contract referrals, all linked to non-competitive bidding processes." A board member, quieter than the rest, asked, "Any evidence of intent?" Karen raised an eyebrow. She was present in Suite 1803. That was all. Another vote. Again, 7-0. Rachel's name was stricken from the employee roster before the meeting even ended. Karen didn't gloat, didn't monologue. She simply closed her binder and stood. Meeting adjourned. Legal will prepare statements for internal distribution. She left the room before Martin could find words. He stayed behind, staring at the center of the table. The glass was so polished, he could see his own reflection. It didn't look like him. It looked like someone who thought rules were optional, power was permanent, and secrets were safe. But in that room, in that seat, there were no secrets left. Only consequences. And not a single person had raised their voice. The envelope was hand-delivered. No knock. No buzz. Just a thud as it slid through the brass mail slot in the front door. Rachel didn't rush to open it. She saw the envelope on the tile from the kitchen and froze, coffee cup halfway to her lips. The return address was familiar. Winters and Holt LLP, a boutique firm they had toured once together years ago, when they were just being cautious. Back then, it was theoretical, a technicality, a footnote in a long, predictable life. Now, it was a scalpel. She stared at the envelope for a full minute before walking over and picking it up. It was heavy, too heavy for just papers. The weight made her palms sweat. She opened it at the counter. Neatly stacked documents. Crisp, expensive paper. Each section separated by colored tabs. Petition, asset schedule, addenda. And near the top, irreconcilable differences. That phrase again. So sterile, so tidy. But it was the packet at the back that broke her. A glossy black binder clip held together several color-printed receipts. Sherwood Hotel, Renaissance Suites, one oddly overpriced bistro in the Arts District she remembered mocking just 2 weeks prior. Each receipt had a title, date, time, and cost. Each was labeled in neat, typed font. Strategy Session 1. Strategy Session 2. Strategy Session 3. And so on. There were 8 in total. At the very back, another note, just one line, handwritten, in his distinct lettering. Thank you for your consistency. She stumbled back a step, as if the countertop had lurched forward. He hadn't made a claim on her savings. He hadn't asked for spousal support. Not even half the house. Just what the prenup allowed. No more. No less. It was worse than fury. It was precision. And then she saw the sticky note attached to the signature page. A different handwriting this time. Sharper. Angular. Karen, we'll be reviewing your involvement in our vendor contract renewals as well. Please preserve all communications. Rachel's knees nearly buckled. That was the part that finally drove it home. This wasn't over. This wasn't just about a marriage or an affair or some half-baked romance at the Sherwood. This was systemic. A full-scale audit of everything she'd touched in the last 2 years. Every deal she thought she'd gotten away with. Every expedited approval she thought no one noticed. Every time she'd said, Martin said it was fine, and forwarded the invoice. They were pulling the thread, and it was her thread. She called Martin. Straight to voicemail. She texted, have you received anything yet? No reply. 10 minutes later, Karen sent me a note. She's coming after everything. Still nothing. She thought about calling Karen directly. Just asking. Begging maybe. But then what? What could she say? That she was sorry? That it wasn't really about climbing the ladder, just losing herself? That she missed the man who used to hum while folding laundry? The man who used to write down the names of every flower in her birthday bouquets so he could get the same ones next year? The man who had now reduced her entire career, marriage, and lies into a series of tabs and footnotes, and made it stick? She sat down at the kitchen table, the same one where she once laughed about how paranoid he was with documents. The same table where he used to lay out his receipts in tidy rows after business trips. She used to tease him for it. Now she understood. Across the room, the fridge still had the salt shaker sitting where it had been the day she came home to nothing. She hadn't moved it. Couldn't. She picked up a pen to sign the documents, then paused. There was one last tab she hadn't opened yet. She flipped it over. A single sheet. Asset reassignment confirmation. The house title. The car. The joint account. All already transferred to him. No court. No discussion. Just procedure. Done. He hadn't waited for her to agree. Because he didn't need to. It was already over before the papers arrived. And now, she finally understood the full scale of what she'd dismantled. Not just a marriage or a job or a weekend of bad choices. She had burned the entire system that quietly held her up for 2 decades. And now it was gone. All that remained was paper. Signed. Sealed. Filed. It was almost exactly 1 month to the day. Rachel hadn't been sleeping much. Mornings blurred into afternoons. Nights stretched long and thin, lit by the pale glow of her laptop and the empty comfort of muted television. She hadn't left the house in 3 days. There was no reason to. No job to go to. No inbox to refresh. Just bills to ignore and job applications to abandon halfway through. always stopping at the line that asked for references she could no longer name. The silence had turned loud. She still checked LinkedIn every morning. Reflex, maybe. Some kind of masochistic routine. She told herself she was keeping up with industry shifts. The truth was uglier. She was looking for cracks in the foundation she'd helped break, hoping, praying, that someone else had fallen too. That someone would say her name, even with disgust. That someone would remember she existed. Instead, the feed was the same as always. Promotions, work anniversaries, conferences she hadn't been invited to. Motivational quotes from people who'd never spent 2 hours practicing fake sincerity in a Sherwood Suite mirror. Then came the post. It stopped her cold. Karen Croft, chairman of Cowridge Solutions. Never one for personal content. She barely posted. No birthday photos. No conferences with matching polos. Her last update had been a company policy link and a note about cybersecurity compliance. But this was different. It was a photo. A simple, well-lit image. Karen, standing in the center, wearing a dark blazer. On one side, her son and daughter, dressed casually, arms slung around her in the way kids do when they still trust you completely. On the other side him. Rachel blinked. Twice. It was unmistakable. Her ex-husband, standing beside Karen, not awkwardly, not like an outsider. He wasn't a guest in the frame. He belonged in it. He stood straight, calm, his expression steady, not smug, not triumphant, resolved. His hand rested gently on the daughter's shoulder. The son was smiling. And then the caption, "Strong partnerships are built on truth. Thank you for standing with us when it mattered." Nothing else. No tags. No hashtags. No location. It didn't need more. Rachel stared at the image until her eyes began to sting. Her hand hovered over the mouse, uncertain whether to scroll down or close the window. She didn't know what would be worse, seeing the comments full of praise, or seeing no one question it at all. Just acceptance. Just silence. Just life continuing. Without her. Her hand finally dropped to her lap. She sat back in the chair, laptop screen still glowing. The room around her was dim. The same candle sat on the counter, half-burned, dusty. She hadn't touched it since that night. Couldn't. There were still 2 moving boxes by the stairs labeled Martin Office. She hadn't unpacked them. They didn't belong to her. But he hadn't taken them either. Maybe he knew she couldn't throw them out. Or maybe he didn't care anymore. She wondered what had happened in that month she couldn't see. Had Karen offered him a role? As what, advisor? Consultant? Partner? Was that what the post meant? Or maybe it was just a message. Not to the world. To her. He chose. He didn't just survive the fallout. He realigned. He landed on his feet. Calmly, quietly, with the people who mattered. And not with the woman who'd spent 20 years imagining herself irreplaceable. Rachel closed the laptop. Stood slowly. Walked to the kitchen. She didn't cry. There was nothing left to expel. No anger. No denial. Just the dull throb of having been erased from a story that had once been hers. She looked around the house. The quiet felt permanent now. Not like a pause. Like a verdict. The man was gone. The company was gone. The reputation was gone. The future? Rewritten. By someone else's hand.